All right. Hello, starseeds and magical friends, and welcome to Warrior Goddess Wednesday. And today, well, it's also an episode of the Neurolinguistic Astrology Salon. So I want to thank you all for joining me live. We have a very special, you can see I'm in my pre Jean Grey outfit, I suppose. Hold on a second. Let me just see if I can. Oh no, we're good. We're good. Let's talk. Okay, so I'm using a new camera today. I'm using my Insta360 camera, so I'm just almost like a little bit thrown off by it a little bit, but not to worry. So what we're going to be talking about today is Jean Grey. Oh yes. So I talked about Jean Grey from a perspective of a character that I initially, I guess, was annoyed with, but I'm of a big fan or a big believer in the sense of that uh, those who we are annoyed with, or let's say those characters that we love, all of these stories that particularly grab our attention, they all have resonance that are really meant for us. So as it comes to Jean Grey, when I first came to X-Men, which was back in the 90s, and like the old X-Men TV show. So that show, my initial favorite X-Men was Storm, but Jean Grey used to just annoy me. I didn't understand why everyone liked her so much. So it was kind of let me just bring this up a bit. Bring myself a little closer to you guys. I don't need it to be quite so wide angle. All right. Okay. Okay, so we are going to be doing a neurolinguistic astrology salon on Jean Grey and a Synastry look about Jean loving Cyclops, or like Jean loving Wolverine. But so we're gonna get into that whole relationship astrology kind of look at things. So without further ado, let's get into the chart of the everlasting now, just as a way for us to ground ourselves in time space as it comes to what we're looking at. Because the way I kind of look at comic books and these types of stories is that they're like new mythology, right? They're a way for us to understand energetic aspects of ourselves. So yeah. Okay, let me just pick up the right screen. Wrong one. Here we go. So we've got the chart of the everlasting now, and let's see what's going on right now. I think we're still in Gemini, right? Yes, we are. We're on the tail end of Gemini season. We still have a lot of activity in Gemini, although not as much as we have had in the past. So let's just take a look. We've got the sun in Gemini, moon in Virgo, Mercury is in Gemini. Let's see, the moon is in Virgo. Oh yes. So Virgo moon's a very practical moon. Your moon represents your emotional self, your inner child, your inner mother, how you deal with things like your inner child, those deeper, darker, subconscious parts of yourselves. And it's kind of good that we talk about this a little bit more in depth, because Jean Grey's powers come from her subconscious. So we're going to get into her background origin story. So I've done, let's say, superhero astrological charts in the past. So I'm just going to flip to the original screen here. So I've done superhero charts in the past, right? And in those cases, the creators of those characters, like Supergirl's birthday is established as being as September 22nd. And Superman's birthday, he's a leap day / leap year baby, making him a Pisces because that's what his character was. And then same thing goes with Wonder Woman. Her birthday's established as like being in March. She's an early Taurus. She's an early Aries baby. That's just like my own bias coming out. But where's I going with this? Yeah, so it was harder to come up with birthdays for Jean Grey and Cyclops and Wolverine because I only have issue dates to work with. So Jean Grey is one of the first X-Men. We're going to go into her origin story now. And this will be a way for me to kind of talk about the difference between how we're going to run the chart for these characters, as opposed to how I've done things in the past with Supergirl and Nightwing, and how we did our little superhero expose investigative work to figure out. What I'm going to do, this is going to be an exercise in what's called rectifying a chart. It's if you know the date of someone's date of birth, but then not necessarily their rising sign. And it's also going to be a cool way to look into, like if you don't necessarily know your birth time, is there a way for you to kind of do some, deduction and figure out perhaps what it could be? Perhaps, yes. So let's go back here. Jean Grey. Make sure that you can see most of it and less of the ads. Okay. I'm just going to read. This is a cool shot of her. So she's very much associated with the Phoenix and the Phoenix Force. And if you were with me for my reading of the history of the Marvel Universe, you could, I don't know if I got into, it did talk about the Phoenix a bit, but the Phoenix is a force of creation, but to create, you must also have destruction. So there's that duality that is involved with this. So here's a quote from Jean Grey. "We came into this world alone and we leave the same way. The time we spent in between, the time spent alive, sharing, learning together, is all that makes life worth living." Jean Grey. Oh yes, that's a great shot of her, all phoenixed out and resurrected. So Jean Grey is a mutant, and my comic book read, because I'm in my Jean Grey form, almost Jean Grey. I'm not in my X-Men form just yet, but I'm reading a comic book. Let me just grab it quickly. Called Judgment Day. Yeah. So it's a crossover. I love the crossover comics, right? So especially for the live reads, because it features everybody's favorite characters, and so they all get to play together, and it's kind of fun to see the interaction. So it is an Avengers, X-Men, and Eternals crossover, and Jean's in it and plays a big role in it. I guess whenever you're dealing with celestial entities, the Phoenix is going to be involved, and Jean is very tied to the Phoenix. But let me just keep going with her origin story. So Jean Grey is a mutant with vast empathetic and telepathic abilities that were traumatically awakened during childhood when she witnessed her best friend's death. So this makes me believe that Jean Grey would have a moon in Pisces. Moon in Pisces we're talking about the moon, and right now the moon's in Virgo. Virgo tends to be a more practical moon. Less likely that Jean would be a moon in Virgo. She would probably have something that deals a little bit more intensely with the emotions and the intuitive state of that. And not to say that Virgos are not intuitive. They do oppose Pisces, right? So there's a lot to be said about understanding your sign by looking at the sign that opposes it, right? So but I would say my hunch is that her moon is likely in Pisces, just from her depth of emotional understanding, and also just the fact that you'll see, her powers, her mutant powers, come a lot from her subconscious, and that is what the moon represents in your birth chart, right? All right, let's continue. Let's make sure you guys can see. Keep grabbing the wrong thing when I'm moving it. Here we go. Yes. All right, so for years, Jean Grey was mentored by mutant specialist, I guess you could call him that, Charles Xavier, a telepath himself. Eventually, she also developed telekinetic powers. So this is, I was doing my reading of Dr. Manhattan, and I kept on calling omnipotent omniscient because I wasn't familiar with omnipotent, but those are two different powers, right? Omnipotent is being all powerful, whereas omniscient is being all knowing. So very similar, but not the same. So being A telepath does not necessarily make you telekinetic, having telekinesis power, like so having that create energy itself. So something to keep in mind. When Xavier opened a school for mutants, in order to prepare his students to carry on his dream of peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans, Jean Grey was enrolled as the last student of his first class. As Marvel Girl, she became one of the original X-Men, a group that fights for a world that both hates and fears mutants. And we get into how, like, the difference in how people treat the X-Men versus the Avengers, even though they live in the same universe. Jean Grey is intimately associated with the Phoenix, an immensely powerful cosmic entity. After being corrupted by the Hellfire Club, Phoenix arose as Dark Phoenix and caused immeasurable destruction. Jean Grey's conscience led the Phoenix to sacrifice herself to prevent further destruction. Jean Grey's connection to the Phoenix, a force of destruction and rebirth, inflicted a number of deaths and resurrections. Upon her most recent return, Jean Grey permanently rejected the Phoenix and took the direction of a new X-Men team. Let's see here. Oh, she was part of the Quiet Council, part of recreating X-Force, and more recently, alongside her husband, Cyclops, she decided to reform the X-Men as a Krakoan superhero team who fights to protect mutant kind. I'm just going to go into Jean Grey's traumatic origin because it's kind of, we're talking about like the dream state and connection telepathically. This is just to show like the, I don't want to say dangers. Well, I guess it is dangerous on some level, but also just to be aware of, like, you know, when you're thinking about like superpowers and all this kind of stuff, that there is responsibility, and perhaps we don't activate because we aren't ready yet to harness whatever that power looks like. So Jean Grey is the youngest daughter of Elaine Grey and Professor John Grey. So she's the daughter of a professor. I understand that. She and her older sister Sarah were raised in a farmhouse near Bard College in New York, where her father taught history. When Jean was 10, she was playing with her best friend, Annie Richardson, who was accidentally hit by a car. The stress awakened. Oh, so this stress, so see, like that pain, that grief, the stress awakened her mutant telepathic powers, which then empathetically linked her to her dying friend. The traumatic experience of Annie's death left Grey in a withdrawn and deeply depressed state. Moreover, she was not able to control her newly awakened telepathic abilities, and it forced her to isolate herself from other people in order to hold on to her sanity, because being that empathetic, she could, this like screams Pisces energy, where like there's no boundaries in that world, right? You can also think of that as there's a level of Aquarius, I think, in that too, because it's from a psychic mental state. So air signs are associated with that too, which is this Gemini stuff happening here with Venus, the Sun, and Mercury all here in Gemini, but in the 5th house. So, and coming close to Cancer. So yeah, this is the chart of the now. Let's get into when Jean Grey first appeared on the scene. So I think there was one that I saw that, here we go. September 1963. October, yeah, X-Men 1. So let's see. So October, but see, remember, like, they all kind of appear at the same time. So technically, Cyclops and Jean would be the same date, but we're going to use this as an opportunity to play a little bit with the ascendant and do a rectification of it. Let's see here. Codename Marvel Girl, X-Men 1. Maybe if I open this link, it'll give me the exact date of publication. It gives me the month, but September. Why does one say October and one say September? I guess. Okay, well, I have a year. And was met with lukewarm reception. So let's see. Maybe we'll just run X-Men as a whole. And then I will figure out Jean and Cyclops. I'll do a little I'll tie it all off with a Jean, Cyclops, and Wolverine discussion about love. Yes. And my thoughts on it. On one of my comic book live conversations, someone asked me, who does Jean love, Cyclops or Wolverine? And I will get to that in just a moment, what my thoughts are on it. I feel like some people thought I had a cop-out response, but I feel like that is what stories do a great job of doing, explaining certain things that are just difficult to do. Okay, this isn't giving me exactly. Let me try one more. Marvel. That's a cool one. I like that. Let's see. She's an Omega level mutant. She can read thoughts, but there's ethics around that too. You should need to ask for permission before you do that. Let's see here. While empowered by the Phoenix Force, Grey has total telekinetic control of matter at the molecular level, allowing her to manipulate atomic structures on a universal scale. She can generate any form of energy in a seemingly unlimited amount, as well as absorb energy from sources as great as supernova, or even convert her physical form to pure energy and back again. So I think the initial time that she became Phoenix was when she was trying to protect her friends from the radiation of the sun, and so the Phoenix resurrected her. Okay, I'm gonna see when was the publication? When was X-Men 1 published? But do you see there's no birth date? If you look at the DC fandom, they tell you, but in this case, they don't. So 1963 is the year. No, it's 1991. What the heck? X-Men. I love that Britannica. On August. What? Why is it saying August 20th? Oh, it's a relaunch of it. Okay, but 1963 was the first one. Okay, I'm now getting further away from it. Okay. This is it. The X-Men one. Oh man, look at that old school costume. Okay, does it tell me? It doesn't really tell you the date exactly. Okay, here we go. Oh my gosh. Okay, so release date, July 2nd, 1963. Cover date, September 1963. What is the difference between that? Oh, well, this can just give me some dates to play with Jean and Cyclops. So September 1963, which is interesting because remember I was telling you guys, I'm like, would Jean be a Virgo? She might be, but she might just have her moon in Pisces. And that would make her sun and moon oppose each other. So let's create a chart. We'll do birth chart. We'll do Jean Grey. And she was born in New York. What did she say here? She grew up in a farm. We'll have these scenes too as well. We'll end with that, no worries. Oh no, now I lost it. We'll duplicate this tab. You can see my superhero research live. No, this is not the right one. No. Yes, I just needed this. Because, yeah, this is saying July 1963. But I feel like she could be July. Okay, let's play with that. If she's early July and she's a Cancer, I feel like that could work. And she was born, that's what I was actually looking here. I just got distracted. A farmhouse here, bar in Annandale on Hudson. That's like an actual place. How do I even... Okay, let's see if this even shows up in the I don't know if that actually worked. So Annandale. Oh. On Hudson? Okay. I think that works. Yeah. New York. Maybe it specifically is, Bard College. Okay. So I think that's good. And then we're going to do month July. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July. So 7. I don't know why I always... Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Yes. And then date. What would it be? Let's give her something magical, like 07, and then 1963. I think that's what they said here. Yeah, July 1963. July 3rd, this is saying. Okay, let's do that. Just kidding. 3 is pretty magical too. So 1963. And I usually like to do 12 a.m. to start, and then we can kind of work from there. Okay, I could get behind this for Jean, actually. So let's do this as like an example, my friends. So according to this chart, Jean Grey would be a Cancer with her moon in Scorpio, which I would say moon and Scorpio people are also very psychic and also very intuitive, because you're dealing with that water sign and also very occulted, so hidden knowledge. There is a big story about Jean when she was first working with the X-Men, that Professor X almost like, she had like this whole alter ego that he like kept secret from herself. And a lot of her latent powers were within that almost like alter ego of herself, that she almost had like the split personality. And that goes back to, does Jean Grey love Cyclops or Wolverine? She loves them both. Different parts of her love them both. So yeah, a little bit of a cop-out response, but I think makes some sense. Let's see what else here that we have. And it's interesting that we talked about Virgo. Mars in Virgo makes sense because even though she's psychic, she was known as like being the best in Professor X's class. So like top grades, really smart. Virgos are very smart. Having Mars in Virgo is about like action and drive, and so she will do everything, like, all the hustle, all the studying, everything that is required to be successful in her endeavors as it comes to that kind of like mental capacity, or her potential to do what it is she needs to do. Her North Node, according to this, is with Cancer. So this is a lot of like destiny. I find if you have your North Node, which is like the head of the dragon, associated with your sun, it's a lot of like, this is a lifetime that you're being called to fulfill a certain type of destiny. So this idea of the phoenix being always attached to her in some sort of way, I feel like that there's a level of that here. The Pisces action that we have here would put her rising being a Pisces, which, hey, I could get behind that, and have that oppose her Mars. So that could totally be that duality in personality, the one side that's very empathetic, very caring, all of that stuff that makes her very popular with her friends. But then there's that other side, that wild side, that part of her that loves Wolverine, that part that Wolverine sees in her, and she does a lot to try to control it. You can see here that Pluto is hanging out with Mars. So this comes with it. I have to look at what that actually would mean. Let's see. Mars conjunct Pluto. Oh, good. It's there. What does this mean? The dance of power and ambition. So for you, this is like a good learning moment. You can also find out the very special aspects that are just yours. So a few of the cosmic dances are as intense or as captivating as that between fiery Mars and enigmatic Pluto. When these titans converge in conjunction, massive amounts of passion and willpower are evoked. That makes sense. So if you have this conjunction, you have an incredible drive for life. This is very phoenixy. Endless ambition and very resilient in the face of obstacles and struggles. Yeah, so they can get through anything. Yes, this definitely sounds like our Miss Jean, that, if it comes to doing what's right, and she'll do what it takes, like dig down and do the hard thing. In love, intense and passionate individuals, they seek deep and meaningful relationships. Yeah, of course. Yeah, so all like deeply empathetic. I think Jean in all of her relationships are that. So that's as a whole. Let's see what else we can talk about before I wrap this up for this particular conversation. I'll have a follow-up with a bit more of a synastry once I figure out what we're going to use for Wolverine and Cyclops. Like, Wolverine was born in like the 19th, 18th century. He's like old, right? Because he has the healing factor. So we can figure out a date that makes sense for that. And same thing goes with Cyclops, but technically he was one of the original X-Men along with Jean, and I don't think that there's a birth date written anywhere. I will do some more research just to make sure. But there's a grand trine, a water grand trine, with her sun, Chiron, and Neptune. That makes a lot of sense for Jean's chart, if this is accurate. And I feel like, my channeling Miss Jean, me cosplaying her later, running her chart, I feel this. The sun being in Cancer too. Cancer is ruled by the moon, and all of that deeply intuitive aspects of it, and doing whatever her motivation is for her friends and those that she loves, right? Which is typically what Cancer is all about, even if it sometimes can be crabby. It can be almost too much, overbearing. There's always a shadow side to every sign. There's always tons of gifts. So it's just important to be aware of both. The Chiron in Pisces, the idea that to heal wounds from her past selves, she will have to delve deeply into her dream and her intuitive state. So that's very fitting. And then Neptune being in Scorpio, she also has her moon there, right? So Neptune deals a lot with the dream state, the subconscious, and so having all of this in a trine really just amplifies the idea of her intuitive subconscious self as being a source of her power. She's got a kite. Not familiar with these particular shapes, but they do generate a lot of power. Let's see what I think in terms of this. The kite signifies that like Chiron makes another appearance here, and these are all very water signs with one earth sign. So there's a level of being able to have this more practical, having the etheric upper level powers actually express themselves in like a tangible sense is what she's able to do. So even what we were talking about before about how she was able to express telekinesis and she was a telepath first, that kind of shows that the kinetic part is the Mars aspect of what more psychic, intuitive, emotional powers, like how it would be expressed. And then we've got a T-square, which typically comes with some tension, where the midheaven is in Sagittarius, ascendant being in Pisces, and Venus and Mercury in Gemini. So the T-squares are like squares where there's some challenge and some tension because these are energies that are quite different from one another. So they will almost in an internal battle pull against each other. So The midheaven is almost like the magnum opus, like what you're called, what you're meant to do as far as your work is here. And so her being a teacher, she ends up being a teacher at the School of Higher Learning in some regards, being a great student, searching for the truth. That's here, but it plays against her being a psychic and feeling into things, and less of it being so logical, right? Just intuitively going along with things instead of like over planning it. And then we've got also this more mutable Gemini side with Venus and Mercury. So her ability to just express love and communicate that is likely why people fall for her so much, because she can, she'd be a great therapist. Yeah, so that's kind of my reading for Jean Grey. I think that this is pretty accurate if based on July 3rd, 1963 at 12 a.m. So we can play with it a little bit more, but I feel like that first, like that's part of like what divination is, right? Or your hunches. This feels right as far as Jean's chart. I'm going to do some digging around and see if I can rectify Cyclops and Wolverine's chart as well, to see if there's some synastry that we can do next time. So catch that. I will try to do that for Sunday perhaps, and then you can catch all of these replays, all of this recording on the Neurolinguistic Astrology Salon, which is available on my Substack in both an audio version and this video version, so you can actually see the chart and stuff like that. So that takes care of that, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me for Warrior Goddess Wednesday. I am signing off. I am your host, Rachel Z. I always forget to do the introduction. If you like my content, please give me a like, share, and subscribe. So appreciated. And I will catch all of you in the next video and on the lives if I see you there for the comic book reading later tonight. All right. Bye.